we were talking about abstract expressionism, in particular looking at what we call action painting, which is one of the two primary subcategories of abstract expressionism. Remember that this is a particularly American movement, and it represents something we're not going to have a chance to trace a lot of, which is the fact that after World War II, the primary center of modern art shifts from being Paris or Berlin to being New York City. It becomes the hub. And in many ways, modern art after World War II, 40s, 50s, 60s, beyond, is dominated by America. And that's not to say they're the only game in town, but really. Whereas when we talked about modern art in the first half of the 20th century, it was all European, right? The Americans were running a little bit behind, you know. There was the Ashcan School, which I talked about a bit online, one of the famous art fixes, which is kind of like 19th century style. And then, you know, with some modernist elements. But the great moderns in America were either people who had gone to Europe, right? Or they were Europeans who had come to America, like Duchamp or Picabia, right? So, but after World War II, this all changes. And America becomes this hub in and of itself. And travels to Europe don't seem to be the reason that artists move in this direction. And a lot of it had to do with the groundwork being laid prior to World War II by various modernist movements and the influx of artists in multiple venues into the American scene. So we're looking at abstract action painting, this one category, and talking in particular with abstract, with gesture and action painting about the importance of psychoanalytic methods of the later part or the middle part of the 20th century, in particular Carl Jung and self-actualization as a way of reaching the collective unconscious, not to be confused with the subconscious. Right? These are very different things. So Freud and the subconscious is all about surrealism. Jung and the unconscious, the collective unconscious, the reservoir, just a big spider web. Light. Can you see it up there? I saw it in the corner of my eye. I thought there was something. When you see it in the corner of my eye, it was totally different. I thought it was like this big, like it was breaking apart. Jung and the unconscious, the collective unconscious is this great well of shared humanity that takes manifestation in places like mythology. At least according to Jung, why some mythologies share certain themes. You know, the idea of a slug, for example, right? Not saying the slug's a myth, but there are themes that seem to pervade these ancient myths. You know, resurrection and death, gods related to wine, and so forth and so on. Right? So, the idea of being aware of your gestures and their relationship to who you are is a way of trying to tap into that quicker unconscious. And Pollock is definitely engaged with this idea because he was in therapy. Klein, I'm not so sure, but certainly his works are all about the importance of that strong gesture, even if he's having to recreate it on a very large scale, right? And at the same time, that sort of that broad, vigorous, immediate gesture that Klein has is, on a certain level, an artifice, because as you can see, the white parts have been equally painted, and it's very much worked up as a surface, back and forth, play between the whites and the blacks. And you can particularly, even in this slide without a detail at the bottom, the degree to which the whites are laid on top of the blacks, and the blacks come up and laid on top of the whites again. So it's not as simple as a simple gesture, even though that's what it's trying to look like, right? And making the artist's gesture as the central subject matter of the work. Now we're going to look at two more abstract expressionists, one in a little bit greater detail, partly because I just like him and I'm in the position where I can do that sort of thing. But also I think he's really more influential and important as a painter. And that's Mark Rothko. He's a Russian immigrant to America. Just like Gorky comes from Turkey, right? But that's not necessarily that important insofar as bringing non-American ideas here. It's just part of his background. His name is Marcus Rothko originally. And as we can see in these early works, that really seem to have that they do seem to have a very strong connection to surrealism still, where we seem to have objects against the background that suggest metaphysical forms that we saw in other artists we looked at, such as most obviously Miro, right? But certainly also Tanguy, right? Some of the surrealists as well. They don't have as strong a sense of space as some of those other works do, but they do have a sense of being characters. And in fact, Rothko once talked about his paintings, especially these early ones, as being actors on a stage, right? So he sees these forms as embodying characteristics, being attributable to a particular symbolism. And as you can see with these two works separated by 4 years, that he moves from things that are more figurative on your left to things that are less figurative. But again, even as he does that, he talks about the fact that these remain figurative in a way. Right? And the title of the one on the left, Antigone, suggests again a connection to this idea of the collective unconscious and its relationship to ancient mythology. Antigone is the daughter of Oedipus, the king. And Oedipus who slept with his own mother against his knowledge, right? Without knowledge. But in fulfillment of a curse that the oracle had told him, he would have to do that eventually. And both Oedipus and Antigone were the subject of plays by Sophocles back in ancient Greece. And the most popular part of her story is how she buries her older brother, who is accused of treason, and leaves him to rot, buried alive. And when arrested, she lectures the rest of the Greeks on divine law, right? The law that would condemn treason being stronger than man's laws, which would be your, fidelity to your family members, right? But none of that is really here, I don't think, right? It seems more that it's a series of forms. I'm going to have to look at it longer and in greater detail to see if there's any way, and I probably have to go back and actually read Antigone to find out. Right? I've read about Antigone, I've not actually read the play. To find out if there's any way that we can translate a particular moment of that drama into this particular image. But you'll notice that he's already well on the road to abstraction in that the human forms where they appear are fragmented, and parts of them are turning into other things or maybe emphasizing elements of the anatomy. Buttocks or testicles, probably buttocks. I think those are women, right? There's also disembodied legs down below. Yeah, he certainly is abstracting the form and moving in a surrealist direction. And then, as we see on the right, he's become more gestural and abstract. And certainly, this is under the influence of surrealism, but also I think Arshile Gorky, right? Remember, Gorky, we looked at from Turkey, had been starting to move in an incredibly strong abstract direction with forms that were similar to this already in the 1930s, right? And Rothko, I sure brought one in to show you Gorky again from 2 days ago. But I think Rothko is certainly responding to that. As we move toward the end of the 1940s, the more rigid, sharp-edged, and geometrical forms of his earlier abstractions give way to more broadly gestural forms. So again, it's almost as if he's starting out to be an action painter of sorts, right? I think if I showed you more or less and said, hey, is that color field or abstracting or just action, you wouldn't have much trouble with talking about it as action painting. These strokes like that one there, or this one coming down here, or always handling that area down below. All of that is really very, very strongly gestural. Right? And like Paulus and others, he's not really worried about controlling the medium, just letting it happen. So we see those strong grips down below, staining off of that broad swatch of red at the bottom center, right? And controlling the medium is not the issue, because the issue is the contact. The issue is the interaction. The issue is the gesture that brought that form there, not what happens after you're done. In so many words, right? I think he's still very much concerned with composition. I don't want to belittle that at all. But there is this sense, I think, with these of that the surrealist open start, the idea of automatism coming very strongly into play. At the same time he's moving this direction, he begins to develop his signature style. And we're very lucky that Rothko, I think the Rothko Foundation left almost all of his works at the National Gallery. There's a significant number of them that weren't already donated elsewhere. So anything that remained in his collection came to the NGA. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Rothkos in the NGA. Right? How do you choose between them? They could mount 15 different shows of Rothko works, right? You can go to the National Gallery every day and they could change them every week and you would never see them all, right? In the 3 or 4 holes they have to fill it with, right? And so moves towards this creeping abstraction, then eventually simplifies into what becomes his signature style, which are large rectangles of color with horizontal bands, often slightly separating them, floating against a colorful ground. And you can see some of the roots of this in the painting on the left, where you can see the bright orange across the top and the cream color down below, and how the other forms seem to float against that, right? And even the one we had before this, same idea, right? If you look at the background, you've got these 3 different color bands, all variations on the same color, but the way those forms, rectilinear forms, float against that, right? He's simplifying this. I want to say he's simply simplifying this, but he's just simplifying this, right? He's finding that, something that, and this would be a nice connection to this, right? Something that Malevich talks about, that 0 degree. Everyone in Malevich, the online thing about Malevich is about the 010 show that he mounted in Russia back in 1915, where they get into the big black square, right? Black square against the white ground, or the white square against the white ground. He mentions that what the artists are trying to do is to find sort of the 0 degree, and by that they mean the bare minimum of art. That's what your man Wandering is trying to do, right? Very much the same thing. And I think Rothko's doing the same thing too. He's developing toward greater simplicity. And as he does, he becomes the primary proponent of what's called color field painting, right? Where it's not so much about the gestures, although those still remain as an important element of this, right? The manner in which the paint is applied is still an important element. But what begins to dominate that are these massive expanses of color. And it's important to remember the size of many of these things. Almost all of these artists, Pollock, Rothko, Klein, all came out of part of Roosevelt's New Deal, which was to put artists back to work. And the New Deal Work in Progress Administration. The New Deal had this idea that there was 2 different venues for artists to work in. One was easel painting, which was seen as a way of training artists to then serve the community by doing murals, right? So as Roosevelt is having construction done with all these great sort of Art Deco banks and state buildings, right, and so forth, we would have artists trained to decorate them by using this combination of the easel painting program and the mural painting program. And Klein, Pollock, Rothko all came out of that school, so they're all trained in sort of realist painting. But they were also very much trained in the importance of works of art as architectural decoration, right? And the way that how can art serve a community if it's tiny? Large art speaks to many people at once. And so the one on your right, if you've not seen it, it's 7 feet tall, right? these are just like Pollock's, these are immersive works, right? As you get close up to them, they fill your visual field, right? So if it was in this room, it wouldn't fit in this room hardly, you know? It would take up most of that wall, yeah? And as you get to a certain point, it really doesn't dominate what you can see. It becomes all you see. And Rothko's very much aware of that. And for two reasons, I think this is really crucial. And one of them is this idea of an art that can have a positive impact on society. That's number one, right? But number two, the idea of dominating your perception, right, means that the work becomes more than just something on the wall. It becomes a portal to somewhere else, a way to get away from here and into there, a way of leaving the world behind. And this is why I think, even though, you know, I wish we had gotten further with modern art, this is not a bad place to wind up with modern art. It's this idea of an art that presents an avenue of escape, which has been, I think, a theme we've seen all the way through. You know, even going back to Gauguin, we've seen this idea of art as an avenue of escape from the rational world. You know, the symbolists did that. And here we are, you know, 75 years later, it's just kind of some of the same ideas are still there. And I had this professor who taught modern in grad school, Gert Schiff. He was a Picasso expert. And he was teaching this class. I was just showing the slides for him. That's when people showed slides for other people. I sat with the projector in the back door and you say, next slide, I'll do it right. Just put that one in, you know, and send it before everything is digital. But Gert was teaching this class on modernism, and it was all about this idea of utopia. You know, which is something we've seen. It's really strong utopian motivation behind so many things that we do. And somebody asked Gert, and this is such a great German thing to say, but I said, you know, why are all these artists so interested in leaving the real world behind and moving to some sort of utopia? And he said this very, very sick German actor. He was like 65 years old. And he stood about 6'5", and about 350 pounds. Massive. This mountain of man, right? Sadly passed away by now. And he said, if you've been in this world for any amount of time, you realize that life is shit. I don't know, it's just kind of, you know, and honestly, you know, and that's because I think, you know, when we're young, we think that everything's really positive. At a certain point, you know, it starts to rain on you. And I think that's something that we see. And when we think about Rothko, in particular, these American artists working, notice the date on these things, right? 1948. This is just after World War II. Right? This is just after, we thought World War I was bad. You know? You find out about the freaking Holocaust, you know? And we've all of a sudden realized that just as humans, we suck. You know, we're not very good at it. When we talk about people behaving like dogs, we wish we would. They don't kill each other in millions and millions for no apparent reason, just because they're of a different breed. You know, that's something humans do. Right? We don't behave like dogs. Dogs behave like dogs. They're nice. You know? We behave like humans, and we suck. So that's sort of what motivates so much of this, I think, is this modern realization that we're not too good at what we think we do well, you know, and it's kind of sad, isn't it? You kind of hope that we could be better, and that, I think, is the hopefulness behind this work by Rothko, is this idea that it's an escape, you know, from the travails of everyday life. There's something really beautiful about that, I think, right? So I think the idea of these occurring, especially the ABAC school in general, really being, you know, congealing. Its roots go to the 30s, you know. Gorky's working with some of these ideas already in the 30s, but the group as a group congealed in New York in the mid to late 40s, right? That's when it really starts to come together. And the fact that it's New York and the fact that it's the 40s, I think, and the fact that that's just after World War II, I think that has everything to do with this. It's an important element that can't be overlooked. I don't have any good details of the one on your right, because I took that one before I knew how to take pictures of paintings. And Rothko's very difficult to photograph, simply because JPEG doesn't handle fields of color well. Especially if it's dark. It's just something it doesn't do, especially digital cameras. They just don't do it well. So I've been working with it, trying to make it come up with things. And you can see that for Rocca, there's no single, set of color phrases that he's trying to use in it. Compositions vary from composition to composition. But he's always very much interested in the interplay of colors. So with the one on the right, you can see that the green is laid on top of an orange, and the orange peeks through from time to time. And it's the sort of thing that if you stare at it long enough, you start to see things that you didn't see at first. And if you look at the one on the right, for example, that strip of light between the black square and the mauve or purple above it, it starts to glow and it starts to glisten and it starts to sort of change as you look at it. And the same thing holds true for this purple, black, and orange one on your left. It makes you wonder as you start to stare at the break between the sections. You start to see the orange at the bottom peeks out in between the purple and the black. And it makes you wonder if you laid that entire thing down orange and then painted over it with black. It makes you want to stick your nose into it and find out how did he come up with this as a solution. And once you do stick your nose in, once you get up close, that's when you jump in. That's when it becomes your dream landscape of sorts. And I think that with many of these more mature works, right, these ones here that really get even more simplified, right, fewer forms, right, that one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different horizontal rectangles on the right, if you count the small zips in the middle. That's not the right word, bands. This one's got 2 against a different colored ground, right, so it's much, much more simplified. And as you dive into those, I think he's intentionally making them landscape-like. Because if you look at it long enough, you start to think, okay, is there some connection between this and, for example, those dream landscapes from Dali or more importantly, I would think would be Tanguy, right, where it's sort of nocturnal dream landscape. And if you think about, dreams and dream landscapes, there isn't really a there. Does that make sense? In other words, there is no place, really, where these things take place, right? It's not any specified area. It's just a landscape. And, let's see, what's coming up? I'm ahead of myself, right? We'll come to the line in the middle in a second, right? Looking at the lower right corner, this is so detailed, just that small area in the corner. You can start to see that just like with Transpine, there's this question of how the paint is laid down, and whether or not it's laid down in just 2 layers or if there's more to it than that. And you'll notice that, for example, there's a brighter, heavier orange just down in the lower right corner that seems to have been put in after some of the black, which seems to be laid over the orange. And then over and above that, the quote-unquote background, which is this grayish blue, that's all the way around, right? At the very edge of the canvas is also painted over the top of the black and the orange. So the idea that the colors float against the background is belied by the fact that that's not the way it was painted, right? And again, I think that his works really do invite you to stick your nose in tighter, to really investigate what he's looking at. And when you read what he writes about his works, he wants you to meditate. These are meant to be meditative, restive works. And again, the idea of a refuge, right, a sanctuary. And in fact, many of them he did install as sanctuaries, as chapels, modern chapels. There's one in Houston, right, that he intends to be a chapel, where these works provide the same sort of inspiration that one might get from a sculpture of a saint or an icon in the Byzantine Church. Here's a nice close-up of that boundary between the two, and as you see the way he varies how he's laid down the strokes, the pink, the purple pink is all laid down with horizontal strokes, and the black down below is vertical strokes, right? And the orange in between with those little bits of white that are poking through. Can you see what I'm talking about? It's a landscape, isn't it? It's that aura you get up the horizon when you're looking at dusk or dawn, And the more you stare at it, just stare at it for a second and watch how that blue in the purple starts to come out. You know, just above the orange. And how the color changes as you look at it, how you start to see things that you didn't see at first. And keep in mind that this is just a digital photo that's 5 times removed from the original. That when you get there, this effect is starting. These are a bit brighter than they are. Right? I brightened them a bit so I could see them in the classroom. But everywhere we look along that line, it just becomes incredibly, it's like a seascape, a landscape, it's a horizon line. And if we think about what horizon lines signify to us all, it's just not a horizon line, the goal, it's the extent that you can see, it's the distance you can see. And we often talk about our horizons, right, as a metaphor for places that we hope to go. Right, the extent of what we can know. And I think he's very much aware of that and using these as ways that we can, again, immerse ourselves in it. When I took this is what the room looked like at the National Gallery. I just found out that they're opening up the modern wing starting in the fall again. It's been 3 years. Time just flies, right? But the National Gallery is really very good about putting these things up because what happens when they do is that they give you a place to sit and meditate. It's really nice because if you're in New York and you're crowded with people, but you can almost always get down to these and sit down for a few minutes, a nice quiet room with 2 or 3 Rothkos, and spend your time meditating. There's a wonderful room at the Phillips. I don't know if you've ever been, the Rothko room at the Phillips. Rothko actually advised them, right, it's before he died in the early 60s, he advised the curators of the Phillips how he wanted it hung, right, how he wanted it laid up, including the proportions of the room, right, the size of the pictures that would be there. And it's almost always the same 3. I think it never changes, but I haven't been here long enough to know that for sure. Right? And the Phillips is very good about maintaining this idea of tranquility and restfulness and sanctuary by limiting the number of people that can go in there at any given time. Right? They don't allow more than, I think, 6 people in at once. And the reason for that is that it's not supposed to be your crowded gallery experience. It's supposed to be an escape. Right? And again, that idea of escape is something we've seen multiple times as we look through the history of modern art. So here's a close-up of the one on the far wall where you can again see, and these are really hard to photograph because it's difficult to get far enough away to get it all in the frame. And so this is not the best of photographs. But you can still see that there's more to it than initially meets the eye. There's a bit of that purple paint underneath the yellow as a thin accent that highlights the separation between the two. So it's not just this yellow square floating against an orange ground, right? And in fact, the orange down below, as the title says, is a separate color from the background around the rip, around the edge. And I think you can only barely see this sort of down in here, where the edges of the orange on orange end, right? You can do so much with so little. I really love Rothko. I just think if I could own a picture, I might own a Rothko. There was a scene in Mad Men. Did you guys see? Did you guys watch Mad Men? There was a scene early on where Burt Cooper bought a Rothko. I should bring this. I got to do this. I got to do modern and find that clip because there's Don Draper and all the rest, and they're standing on there just staring at me, going like, "What do you see? I don't know. What do you see?" And because they're all looking for something, right? And now, 50 years later, this is very easy to see this as and accept it as being sort of part of the masterworks of modern art. But in 1954, that still got to hit people right in the teeth, when they're looking for something. And even though, and Rothko even said, when he says, I see my shapes as actors on a stage, right? My canvases are the stage, my shapes are my actors. He's also talking about these ones, right? He's not just talking about those early quasi-action paintings. He's talking about all of his work. And you're not supposed to look for anything in the picture, I don't think. And this is the key. You're supposed to look for something in you. You're supposed to find something inside yourself by using these. These are a tool that you can use to improve yourself. And there's that idea of helping, right? Of an art that has a positive impact on the world around it. Yeah, and they're all like, what? I don't know what this thing is. One of the things that's important to bring in as a bit of an influence here is this artist from the Bauhaus, Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers had, where are my notes? I had to look at this to get the date when he shows up. Maybe I didn't write that down. Oh yeah, here it is. Joseph Albers he was the master of glass at the Bauhaus in the 20s and the early 30s. And he came to America when Hitler closed the Bauhaus. He started teaching at Black Mountain College in North Carolina, outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Right? And in 1947, Albers began to do a series of paintings that he's best known for, which is called The Homage to the Square. Right? And there's hundreds of these, with different color combinations, almost invariably in this exact same layout. Right? 3 colors, stacked squares, weighted towards the bottom. And the whole point of these is to understand, in a very sort of simplistic, non-representational way, what sorts of ideas, thoughts, emotions are evoked by color interplay. Right? And this is why he always gives them these secondary titles like Light Rising. Right? Because it suggests, the rising of the sun. But they're all called Homage to the Square. Right? And he begins these in 1947. Rothko begins these in 1948. Right? And by that time, Albers is in America. So I don't think that there's a coincidence here. I think this has got to be something where what Albers was beginning to do in playing with colors has some impact on Rothko. At the same time, I think Rothko is much more complex and an interesting artist in that the works themselves have a more lasting quality and I think are much more emotional in a way insofar as how they react to something. I've always thought Albers dry and studied, and they're more like color theory solutions or design class issues. Well, hell, it came out of the Bauhaus, right? So why not that? Here's the other one from the room in the Phillips, right? And again, the colors here are not translating well. The computer doesn't like Rothko, right? Because it wants to juice up and alter pictures. What I need to do is sit down with my computer and do it in front of it, and try to get the colors correct. Because this green is certainly much deeper than this. The blue is nowhere near so hot as that. Electric as that. But it still gives you a sense, I think, of how he's working through these ideas that he's playing with. Here's some close-ups of it so you can see that as he's working that orange over the top of the blue, he's interested in how they interact with each other, both on top of each other and even mixing into each other, and how that relates to the way they work with the lighter canvas up above and coming up close to that green. But again, you start to see these things, and as you look at them, they become, the sort of things you see when you close your eyes too tight, when you rub your temples, or even, migraine sort of things. And I mean that in a good way, that sort of, if you can divorce the headache from the things that happen with your eyes, you can somehow divorce that and then see, so there's something beautiful about the things that happens with your eyes with a good migraine. It's a good migraine. But anyway, there is that sort of Star Trek effect that one can get. These areas like this bit right here, I think they're so stunningly beautiful. And they just beg that you stare at them for a long time. They really just want to be looked at, I think. And they inspire us in many ways to just keep looking and spend time with them and meditate. And that's the point, is that meditation. Again, they look like landscapes, don't they? They look like rivers running through some sort of Martian landscape with a greenish sky up above. I know it's a reference that gets lost here because I dropped it before people didn't get it, but at the end of 2001, the Great Movie from '69, He's about to land on Jupiter, and all of a sudden, all the colors start to change on him. He's looking at the landscape, and it's all because the director is flipping making the colors that he's photographed flip from positive to negative. You know, and you know how color positives and negatives work. So that it's off. You know, the negative. If you have a back when they used to take pictures on film, you used to have a thing called a negative, right? And that would be what you printed the picture from, right? And I'm not condescending. I'm just making this joke. Well, anyway, in a black and white negative, the blacks are white and the whites are black, right? But in a color negative, it's the opposite on the color wheel, which is pretty cool and psychedelic, right? So a green is a red, and a red is a green, and a blue is an orange, and an orange is a blue, right? Purples are yellows, and yellows are purple on a negative, okay? So these works have that sort of effect. And that's what they were doing in 2001. They were flipping it from the negative to the positive in the same shot, right? And it became really cool, and then 69 was all psychedelic. Right? Well, here, 53 is way ahead of psychedelia, but it still is that interest in these sort of supernatural colors that transport us to a sort of supernatural environment. And that's exactly what Rothko wants us to do, right? Is to find that place. So these are really metaphysical pictures. They're really supernatural intention and aim. And despite all of this, Rothko took a major, I didn't bring the pictures that I should have. I have them, but I don't have them in the PowerPoint. Rothko took a major commission to decorate the Four Seasons restaurant in New York, in the Seagram's building in Midtown. And he did it with these amazing red canvases, right? That he saw this as something that he could use even in a totally commercial environment, like a restaurant, where they could have a role to play there as well. So anyway, there's Rothko. We want to look at one other color field painter just to get a sense that it's more than just Rothko. I think we should see more than one. Barnett Newman, also working usually very large. This one here is only about 5 feet across. Only like that. Not as big as Rothko's. But also certainly qualified as a color field painter, and just like Rothko, every bit as interested in the spiritual qualities of art. What characterizes Barnett Newman's work, and by the way, the idea of spiritualism is evident in a number of his titles. Covenant. What's a covenant? A promise, right? An agreement. But not just any promise, right? It's a promise, a spiritual promise, isn't it? Most often used in agreements between God and man. Judeo-Christian ideas, right? The new covenant, the old covenant, right? Christ's relationship with Christians is the new covenant, right? Jehovah's relationship with the Jews is the old covenant, right? How he will forgive us and welcome us into heaven, that's God, right? It's spoke of, the terms of that agreement are a covenant. Right? You hear it in wedding ceremonies, this covenant between man and wife, right? Even though it's a sacrament, but they talk about it as that same sort of holy accord. So he too is very much interested in these ideas of spirituality as addressed through his work. And for him, which is very different from Rothko, he came up with the idea of these strips, these bands of incredibly bright color. Now Rothko has some of them too, but you'll notice his are much more expressive, aren't they? Whereas Barnett Newman's are much more delineated, right? They're sharper edged. And Newman called these things zips, right, in this painting. It sounds kind of trite, doesn't it, compared to this idea of some sort of holy covenant. But he called them zips. And he made them in two different ways. Sometimes he would lay down a piece of masking tape and paint over the top of it, and then just pull the masking tape out. That's why they called them zips, right? Zip off the films, and you would see the color underneath. Sometimes he would do that and then come over the top of it with paint so that that zip itself took on a sort of vibrant life, right? But what he saw the zips as being is an opening in the picture. They weren't something that's meant to be on the red. They're supposed to be an opening to something behind that color field, right? So just like Rothko, the painting becomes not something to look at, but something to engage in, something to enter into, to move through, and eventually, into a world that's not this one, right? A world that is better than we are. And he said that when he hit on the idea of the zips, right? And with this one, I think one of the writers with the masking tape for one of us painted. But he said this was the beginning of my new life. Right? This was really everything for me. And he really did feel that these things had a very, very strong sort of social engagement. In fact, Newman once ran for mayor of New York. He was the idea that he as an artist could have something to do to change society. Needless to say, he wasn't very successful that way, but he did run for mayor one time. Sometimes, like our action painters, he gives these things mythological titles, right? Dionysus is the Greek god of wine, right? So obviously he's not representing Dionysus. That was the horrible slide. This is the best I could find. It's darker than that. I tried to play with it in Photoshop to get it to look anything like what it looked like, but one time I was able to see it, and I can't. So hopefully in the fall, right, when they reopen the National Gallery. But there's the two zips now horizontal, right, and not intended to represent Dionysus, but maybe what they are is the path to get there, right? That maybe those Jungian ideas of arriving at our mythology, our shared mythologies, gets us to the collective unconscious and helps us to understand better what it means to be human. Is what he intends with this. That you see the painting and you engage with Dionysus not in a simply representative way, a representational way, but rather that you engage with Dionysus in a spiritual way. You find where he lives. You get there yourself. The very last slide is a yellow one as well, with three zips of lighter or more intense yellows with middle and two white ones on the side. I think the important thing to remember with so much of modern art, and especially with abstract expressionism, is this incredibly intense humanity to these works. If you think about them, it's very difficult at first to think that. You think of them as being somewhat off-putting and a little bit esoteric maybe and divorced from everyday experience. But if you think about what motivated these artists to do these things, right, why they are doing what they're doing, then you realize, I think, the degree to which these are some of the most intensely humanistic expressions of all time, in many ways. But they're really trying to find those things that we share, those things that are at the heart of, at the soul of, the spirit of what it means to be human. Right? And hopefully sharing some of the insight with others. There's an old adage that we know what we like, but I think the other option is that we like what we know. And the more you know about these things, the more you realize that if we take them in the way that they were intended to be taken, these have an incredible power and an incredible ability to help us understand who we are and maybe see our world in a better way. And I think on a certain level that's been the lesson of modern art all the way back to the 1890s, is and what all art should do is to help us see our world in a different way, and in a way that makes us want to help it be a better place. So that's my last slide. We have a half hour or so left. I think it'd be worthwhile sort of just chatting a little bit as a group about those 4 essay questions, where you might go with them, and using that half hour profitably, since you're all expecting to be here anyway. Right? So I'm going to turn off the recorder for this, because I'm not so sure. Well, let's see if I can get somebody writing up on the board, and it won't make any difference, right? So